I remember looking in my office, looking down and looking at all my staff and going, fuck, I don't think I'll be able to pay these guys this month. I was at my peak in terms of money value, in terms of YKTR value, sitting in front of the Eiffel Tower. I wasn't happy. I just felt sad and empty. And the reason why is because I'd been on this path for so long. I started to lose friends, I lost touch with family. And I was sitting in front of the Eiffel Tower and I looked around and everyone was happy and they were sharing experiences with each other. And that was a big lesson I learned, was life's not so much about destination where you're at, but who you share it with. I was buying $8,000 a night stays in Byron Bay for the whole crew to come stay in. It was fun, don't get me wrong, but you just don't. So if you think about the pendulum swing like that, so there's negative and positive to everything in life. So everything has a plane towards it. So there's cold, there's hot, there's death, there's life. But what you got to do is the universe is always perfectly balanced. So if you're not centered, if you're not grateful for where you are, the universe is going to swing the other way. My alignment comes from peace. When I'm peaceful, I'm more creative, I'm more fun to be around. And I felt like everything's starting to come back in. There's a lot of bad things have happened over the past probably 2 years, to be honest.
If you can channel that energy and you've got a fucking plan in reality to make it happen, and it doesn't always follow that same plan, but you got this fucking vision of where you want to go and you've got a plan to get there. If you just fucking commit to both of those things, the universe will figure it out for you.
I probably don't deserve to be successful if I can't take all those lessons and keep making the same mistakes. Yeah, you don't deserve to be successful.
All right, guys, this honestly was one of my favorite episodes I think I've ever had on the podcast. Me and Ice were just bouncing as two people, both been in business for 7-8 years, used it as a little bit of a therapy session just to diagnose, to reflect on some of our biggest lessons. Obviously, you've been in business for as long as we have. There's plenty of ups and downs. There's massive eye-opening experiences. There's some battle scars as well. We reflect on our journeys, and Ice really opens up about some of the biggest challenges he's gone through. For those that know Ice and have followed his journey, the big change from the old YKTR offices with all the boys, we go really deep on him kind of explaining and talking through that process. And we both kind of explore our own egos and the pros and cons to it, and really how we map out growth in the future. So such an interesting episode, super deep on everything business and growth. We go quite deep into some spirituality stuff as well. So super interesting podcast. I know you guys are going to love this one. Before we get into it, could I ask for a couple of favors? If you're watching on YouTube, do me a quick favor. It genuinely takes 2 seconds. Like this video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And then if you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, if you could leave that a 5-star review, I'd really appreciate it, and it really helps the podcast grow. Anyway, let's get back to it. All right, we're back again. Ice, welcome back for part 2. Now, for those who don't know Ice, again, a lot of you already will, given the nature of who follows me, but ex-NRL player, played for the Panthers and New Zealand Warriors, also represented your countries, New Zealand and Cook Islands. So had a pretty good playing career, but I think personally for me, and what a lot of people would say, I feel like you've become a lot more famous or well-known for everything you've done off the back of your playing career, the content, the clothing, the podcast as well. So obviously we've kind of went through your whole journey before, so I'm not going to rehash that. But I think where I kind of want this conversation to go is just I think, we've both been in business for about 7 or so years, pretty heavily involved day in, day out. It's been our lives. So just as two business owners talking about the ups and downs, kind of that whole journey. I think you've been in business for as long as we have. We were just joking off air. When you're a year, 2 years into business, you think you fucking know it all. Everything's too easy. But 7 years, 8 years gives you some battle scars, some new perspectives, some lessons, obviously some great times as well and some highs. But I just think let's just chat, maybe use this as a little bit of a therapy session, which we kind of do when we're chatting anyway, and just see what comes from that. Obviously, there's some things that we've spoken about recently that I want to kind of talk in a little bit more detail about on the pod, some spirituality stuff, some just personal lessons and growth, which I know for me, a big pillar of my life has been personal growth. And I feel like you're someone that's probably as obsessed, if not more obsessed with that yourself. So really looking forward to chat, bro. Appreciate you giving us your time.
Thanks, bro. How are you? You good?
I'm good, man. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. Nice and chill. So.
Yeah, dude. You're a man that always has a lot on your plate. And you've got a very loyal following. We've been following you for a long time. You just mentioned before, you don't think you've been a guest on a podcast for a while now. I just want to touch base with, because I know a lot of people would be curious. There's a lot of change going on in your life and with your businesses at the moment. Where's things at? Where's your head at? And just give people a little bit of an update, because I'm sure heaps of people would love to know.
Yeah, life's good. Obviously, I'm going through a lot of change at the moment, but it's kind of change I've asked for, unintentionally. Obviously, when you sort of write down goals, you get bigger challenges, and whatever you believe in, whether you're religious or you believe in the universe, it's always going to challenge you. And sometimes when you write down bigger things and some of those challenges come through, you don't like them at the time. And even though you understand what's going on, Sometimes it's hard to let go, but once you sort of accept reality for what it is, I feel like you start to see solutions. So sort of back end story, obviously YKTR Sports. YKTR still going. YKTR Sports probably died off a little bit when all the boys left. Used to have multiple offices, lots of staff. I thought that's what being an entrepreneur was, and that's what I used to see on Instagram, and that's what I thought would be cool. So, and sort of get to a point in business where, like, I remember looking in my office, looking down, and looking at all my staff and going, "Fuck, I don't think I'll be able to pay these guys this month." And then start looking at guys and they're starting to have babies, and like you feel like you're obliged to support them and their families. Technically you're not, but sometimes when you're in that position you feel that type of guilt. And a lot of things have changed, but at a great point in life right now. Got rid of a lot of businesses that I was involved in, just focusing on a couple of things, bro. And probably the main thing is just trying to be happy.
Yeah. And that's something I wanted to chat to you about as well. As I said, like we kind of chat, you've got a lot of things going on, but right now, to simplify it, like what's the one project where, okay, I'm waking up and I'm working on this? What gets you out of bed with the most excitement?
Probably the self-development, learning about myself stuff. Like YKTR is in a rebrand phase right now. So we've gone through like 7 years of business.
Yeah.
Who we were at the time when we started the business, we're definitely not those guys anymore. We've grown up. Like, I feel like if I was a young guy that was still partying and going on benders every weekend and like chasing girls and stuff like that, like I'd be a little bit embarrassed of myself. In the phases of YKTR, like how we started, that's just who we were at the time. The second phase was to call YKTR Sports Era. Like we were promoting gambling and partying, same sort of vibe, because we're trying to appeal to a certain demographic. And even though we were those people at the time, like I feel like if I was still doing that type of content, I'd be embarrassed of myself again. So the rebrand of YKTR, which is happening in the background, has been interesting. It's like sort of looking at yourself in the mirror and go like, who are we? And like, who do we want to represent? And like when you build brand, you want it to sort of mean something. And probably the last couple of years, it hasn't, in all honesty. So I was trying to reposition your brand because I still feel like it still means something to me. I just need how to reposition it and push towards the future, which has been an interesting exercise.
I think, and I know you'd agree, I think 2024, even looking back 2023, I think even, and looking to the future ahead, never more so in the history of business, like say the history of business since I've been alive, right? Has the brand founder story been more kind of connected to the business? Obviously, some of the things that work best now is your world, the content piece, and we'll talk about that later, but it can be like, it's probably the most important personal brand and that connection to the brand has ever been. You look back and reflect that last few years, how you kind of drifted away from the core of what you guys were and what you were right now. What do you think caused you guys to kind of stray off path? Were you looking at competition and following them, or were you just working towards a goal you set 5 years ago and not realize this isn't even what I want anymore?
Yeah, a bit of everything. I think my biggest flaw is like I try to take everyone with me. So I heard Stephen Bartlett talk about this, is like your job as an entrepreneur, try to replace yourself. And I used to always try and put people in positions where I could still maintain control. I'd never hire anyone smarter than me or better than me in certain positions. And like I'd hire them, get them to do a job and like, oh, I don't like that. Like, let me change that. So when you're at the top of the tree, you can't really like go up or down. Like it's all on you, which it should be as an entrepreneur. But probably in this next phase of business is like my goal is to hire people that are 10 times smarter than me, because I'm going to grow with those types of people. And a lot of those people that come into those positions don't necessarily want the risk of entrepreneurship or like willing to risk it all. Like I look at you, I feel like you're willing to risk it all. I'm willing to risk it all. Like I don't give a fuck. If I lose all my money, I'm still going to go again. So it's finding that balance. I went through this phase and I still go through it now. I struggle with it where I just want to help people around me, and it ends up always fucking me. Like the amount of money I've given to friends and people to, if I give them money, this is going to help them on their life, and you never get that money back, or you give this person an opportunity to keep fucking you over and they steal from you. And I feel like that's the lesson I'm trying to learn at the moment, is like, who do I help and who do I don't? And I've found in this little phase I'm in right now, it's just like, fuck, I just want to focus on me. And I think good things will happen from that. Because that comes from you wanting, like, you're obviously a caring guy deep down, you want to be able to help people, but how do you draw that line and do it in a way, like you need to do it so inner resentment doesn't build from you and you start, oh fuck, I helped this guy out now, he didn't pay me back, and it starts affecting the way you see the world? How have you been navigating that in a way to not lose the value of the reason why you wanted to do it,
but maybe draw a line and be like, okay, I need to set some boundaries here?
Two ways. So one, the drawing a line is if you feel like they owe you something back, that's the point where you should stop.
Good point.
Yeah. So it's like, say if you give someone $1,000, it's like, it's not going to like affect your life too much, but it could potentially change theirs. But if you start going into that 5, 10, 15, 20K, you're like, shit, I should feel like I should be getting some money back.
Yes.
That's probably the line to stop. Or you inviting people into your house and they can live for free and you're feeding them and stuff. Once they start to feel that tiny bit of resentment, there's the line.
I think I've asked you about this before. You're pretty comfortable having uncomfortable conversations. Am I right?
Oh, I think once I get there, and probably there's going to be a lot of lessons in this. Another lesson I'm learning right now is like closing the gap between A and B. I think that's what really good entrepreneurs do. And I don't feel like I'm that great. I'm comfortable in uncomfortable conversations, but the time for me to get to that uncomfortable conversation, it takes way too long.
Yeah.
So there's times you understand this is like when you hire someone, like within the first week, you know it's not going to work. And over time, you're like, oh, if we just hold on a little bit longer, once he has that 6-month mark, he's going to get better. That never happens.
No.
And if you think you're going to give him a pay rise, which is going to make him do their job better, that's like the worst thing.
That's the worst. Yeah.
It's like when you see struggling couples go, oh, let's have a baby.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like,
look, it might fix the situation for 3 months, very short term, and then you're just going to be, way worse off. It's that classic. I'm sure everyone's seen that photo. The guy trying to hold on to someone down a cliff and he's getting bitten by the snake. Like sometimes letting go can be the best thing for you. And you mentioned going on that journey from like you're looking down. There's like 10 boys downstairs, and you're like doing the math. Okay, that's like how much a week you got to pay everyone, and it's a lot. But that journey for you to go on, but from that, point of realizing, hey, for whatever reason in, past a version of Ice or Isaac has been like, this is what I want. And then you go and you get it. And sometimes you realize that isn't actually what I want. Now that I've experienced it, it's not what I want truly. But to then go and kind of walk back a situation like that and start making those changes, I know from being in business as well, that's not a decision you wake up and make overnight. There's weeks, potentially months of reflection, trying to really understand yourself inside you to a core. What's the best for me? What do I truly want? What did that process look like? And like, were you back and forth in your head? Could you elaborate?
Always. Like ego is a big one. Like I can get through this. And like I've lost like over probably a couple $100K over the past couple of years of investing into the wrong people. Just like my own money too. And that's like net money. So basically
that's taxed and everything.
That's already being taxed. So, but yeah, like, I think probably keeping up a social media persona as an Instagram sometimes, because like we had the shiny office and everything. We could afford it at the time, but you don't really need it. Like we had the fancy holidays.
Yeah.
I was buying like $8,000 night stays in Byron Bay for the whole crew to come stay in. Like it was fun, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But you just don't need it. No, and once everything started to go to shit, none of those guys sort of stuck around. So another lesson you learn from that one is like everyone wants a piece of the pie on the way up, but when you're on the way down. And probably one thing I do regret over the time, I've always been transparent in my journey when I fucked up through everything. But I think within business, I was super transparent with like money, how things were working. So basically I was building their brand for them. I was paying those guys to build their brand, but not having a consequence for them leaving without having any contracts in place or anything along those lines. So like, I felt like I was doing the right thing because I was giving so much and they didn't have much before that, but I was the one that ended up getting burnt money-wise, ego-wise, reputation-wise.
See, that's the thing. And that's like, obviously there's even another layer of changes when you're working with mates, right? But I think like that's just being the business owner, bro. That's the fucking, you know what I mean? Like there's a lot of really good pros, right? And like, when it's up, everyone wants to be your best mate. Everyone's around you. But then when it's low or when things are like, you got to, okay, we've got like 3 months to fucking make some changes here or we're going to have no fucking money. Then you kind of find out, people's motivations. But it's also at the same time, it's like, you started this business, no one else did. Yeah, it's like, and sometimes
not their fault.
It's not their fault, but there's this wrestle, and it's like you can sometimes as the business owner, this is just my experience. And I've chatted to fucking hundreds of other business owners as well, and a lot of people can relate. It's like you feel like you want them to care more than they do, but it's like you can't really expect that of people. What was that journey of you like? Because I know like you would have went through some like a lot of growth and reflection over that period. How did you come out the other side? Like, what was the lesson? What was the new perspective that you're like, you know what? I'm happy. Like it happened. I've made my peace with it. What was that lesson, the new perspective that you move forward with?
Just a quick one from me.
If you've been listening to the podcast for a while, you'd know that after scaling Happy Skin Co. to over $10 million per year, I spent close to 18 months creating the viral brand builder program, which teaches someone with zero experience how to launch and scale their very own e-commerce brand. With over 100 training videos and direct access to me, including one-on-one calls, you'll be guided throughout the entire process. Now, we already have a bunch of incredible results from students that are making multiple 5 and 6 figures per month. So if you want to learn how to build a business that has the potential to completely change your life, then click the link in the description and book in an application call today. Spots are limited as you'll be speaking directly to me. So hopefully I'll chat to some of you soon. But until then, let's get back to the podcast.
It takes time. It takes time. So like my natural like ego progression is like resentment, and then I go for petty. Like I'm petty as fuck.
Okay.
When I'm in my egotistical state. And I was talking about this on my Instagram the other day, like when I'm emotional, when I'm drunk, like obviously your IQ lowers, so it gives a chance for ego to come through and shine and do its thing. And like great things about ego, like we want to start businesses if we didn't have them. And when you're down and out, ego's that person on your shoulder going, fuck it, let's go. But the other side of it is like the healing process took a lot longer than it needed to because there's a lot of ego involved. And bro, I was going to do some of the pettiest shit, like when the boys left and started Levels, like I was going to trademark Levels, like, stuff like that.
The shit that pops in your head, eh?
Yeah. I was going to trademark Levels. I knew some people that could do, it sounds like dodgy ads, but I was just going to make their life harder than it needed to be.
Yeah.
I knew how much money Scope had in his savings. Once I trademarked, I was going to sue him and try and wipe him for everything he had. And like, I don't think I would have the balls to go through it, but those are like the types of conversations that were going through my head. And like Scope left for a good reason. He wanted to support his family. Yeah. But what ego was telling me in my mind is like, this guy's fucked you over.
Yeah. Like it's very like,
and to be fair, I've seen him once since then, and we sort of like fist bumped since then. But because we talked about that closing the gap between A and B, if we just met and he'd probably want to, like I was the one who was like resenting it, could have just been like solved straight away. Yeah. Where I just let it run, and it's been like a year and a half now, you know what I mean? And over that time, that ego tells your story of like, he's fucked you over.
Yeah.
And at the time I had reasons to, because like his podcasts, they wouldn't make money for a long time. So I'd pay a lot of his wages out of my own pocket, and had a baby on the way. So I was just like, fuck, I'm going to have to stick by him because he's got a baby. Like, this is on me. That's what my mind was thinking. It's not true.
The bigger the pressure cooker as well, you're not going to make better decisions when there's more pressure on the line. You're just not. It's like,
because he was having a baby in November. And I remember at that point, it'd been like 5 months since any of his content had made money for the business.
Yeah.
In theory, I should just let him go 4 or 5 months ago. But I was like, my thing was like, I'm not going to let him wake up on Christmas Day and not have money to feed his daughter. And then literally he didn't really know about the stuff. We were just sort of paying his wage. Me and Natasha, who's been like the backbone of me and the business, like she's got 2 kids. Like I made her chop her wage in half so we could support Scope. Yeah. And then it got to that sort of February time, and we had this big dabble deal that come through, like showed him how much it was worth. I was like, I'm just going to like pay my money back, and then basically this is yours. We'll clip ours back eventually. And then come in the next day and he's like, wow. Yeah. And the thing that hurt me the most wasn't that he left. It was just how he left. That was like the thing that hurt me. He just has like, I've got this guy who's like believes in me, and like, you know what I mean? And we'd put him on for 2-3 years.
Did it almost feel like you were saying you didn't believe in him?
That's how my ego heard it. Yeah. But that was a hard thing because we'd like boot him up and funded him out of my own pocket to support him and his family. And he just goes, I've got someone who believes in me, and just literally took off the next day. Yeah.
How were you? Like, did it come as a big of a shock to you as it did to everyone else watching from the outside looking in?
Out of it, like I feel like I've got an okay grip on like when things are going to happen. In terms, like I've just recently gone for a relationship breakup too. Could feel that coming. Yeah. But that was like the one thing that like proper blindsided
you.
I had no idea whatsoever.
I feel like
none. It
was from the outside looking in as well. Obviously, like sport's a big passion of mine. Like not like super into it, but like pretty across all the sports media stuff. So when I saw that, and obviously, like you said, you can understand both sides as well. Obviously, my first reaction is like the business owner side. I'm like, fuck, like that's rough, man. But like looking back and reflecting on that, like you said, for the last 4 or 5 months he was there, if maybe you had a honest conversation about that and maybe some future planning, maybe that situation could have been avoided. Who knows? Do you have those sorts of like play outs in your head where you think of what if I did this or I should have done that in the lead up or?
Yeah, for sure. And like, I feel like I was always pretty transparent with Scope because we were friends for a long time and he was kind of like I used to call him like my assistant coach. So I'd always come in hard on the boys that were fucking up and he'd be the guy that wraps his arm around him.
Yeah.
Like all that type of stuff. So like we had a like pretty good and honest like relationship with each other. So yeah, it did like blindside me. But yeah, looking back, like there was things I didn't really tell him. Like obviously Brett Finch when he was with us and obviously the stuff he went on to go. You'd have no idea that was happening behind the scenes. But Finchy would come into the office and go, you got to pick me or Scope or else I'm out making rugby league content. I was like, see you later. Like, I'm with Scope. And then Scope and Simi started like beefing and hating each other. And I kind of had to pick between Simi and Scope. And like obviously Simi's the wonderfully talented, creative, but like no fucking structure. You know what I mean? Like Simi could be anything.
Yeah.
And where Scope was kind of like always a nice, steady guy. So I'm like, oh, let me just stick with Scope.
What was it like? Because I know Simi a bit now as well. We chat online like here and there, like great guy, like just such a great human being, funny guy. But I can imagine in a professional setting, working with and manage, like being a mate and technically the boss of a guy like that would come with challenges. Do you think it tested you at times?
Yeah, for sure. Like probably out of everyone in my life, he's the one guy who could like proper challenge me because I find him so funny.
He's so fucking funny, dude.
Yeah, so we'd argue and then he'll say something like out of nowhere and I'd just be like start cracking up. Yeah, I don't know. He's just got this charm about him that he's like a puppy dog.
right?
Yeah. Like he'll come in, tear your carpet up, piss on the floor, but like you still love him. But he was like, I don't know. He was the best, but it's just like, how do you channel that energy? The hard thing about Simi was, and we always say this in meetings, was like, bro, you're such a big energy. Like when you walk in, like you demand, like you get the attention because like you're the guy, and it's a great skill set to have. But when things aren't going your way, like he's the guy that can bring everyone down with him.
Yeah, really easily, right?
Really, really quickly. So, and another thing I regret doing is like, I thought like we were all like this team and everyone was happy for everyone. And that was kind of the environment that I'd try to like create. And then like when boys would get a pay rise, like, oh, like congratulations. Like Jackson's got a pay rise. He's like deserved it. And I thought everyone would be happy for him. And only half of the boys are happy for him. And the other boys are going, well, what's he doing? What's he actually doing? So I've created like an environment that ended up being like super toxic.
But you also spoke about as well, like at a time, like you kind of created like this band of misfits, like not misfits, but it's like just everyone was a little bit rogue in their own ways. And like that was your greatest strength. But even like Caleb as well, super talented, super creative, but has his own, uniqueness that makes working with Caleb a challenge, right? But looking at where you've like the whole team from there, everyone, and this is where I think comes down to like, even though like, you were the head of that, you can have these reflections on things you could have done differently or on reflection you thought they could have done differently. But one thing I think like as the leader of that you should be super proud of is like, look where everyone is now, not just in terms of business wise and the opportunities they're working on, but I feel like Simi definitely has. I've had a conversation with Simi from the content that I like levels again, like the product that they've made is quite cool. Even Scope looks like, and you definitely have gone on this like big reflection and self-growth journey from that period in your life.
Yeah, for sure.
Would you agree with that?
Yeah. It was like, do you know what it reminded me of? It reminded me of like the last year of school. Like, We used to talk about this and when like exams are over and you got those like month left of school and like nothing really
it's just chaos.
Yeah, but things were going great. We were making like a lot of money and the boys are starting to get a lot of like brand deals and fuck, this is what Simi used to do. Like we used to have a saying in the office, it's like Bunsen, which means like basically what I said to the boys and like, their contracts were like, say, Scope, he was paid full time. He got 20% of all clothing deals, 40% of all ad revenue. 80% of any deals that would endorse for him. So he had a Super Bowl deal. It was like $5,000. He gets $4,000. We get $1,000. And then anything outside of that, you get to keep 100% of yours. So like when you're at work hard. And I used to have this theory of like the rising tide raises all ships. So we'd come in, I was like, every day you get like a metaphorical bucket and you can do two things with the bucket. You can drink the water on your own or you can tip it into the tide. If we tip it into the tide, which is YKTR, all our boats are going to get bigger. We're going to get more attention. Everyone's going to get more money. And then it wasn't working out like that. And all the boys were worried about was getting all their side money. So they might do a radio gig and get $300 or $500. And they're like, ooh, like I'm getting a bit of a Bunsen. And like, I kind of flipped it. So we had this big meeting. I was like, all right, I don't want to hear fucking no one talk about Bunsen anymore. Like, focus on the job that you're getting paid to do.
Yeah.
Wasn't until I start saying all that sort of shit again. I was like, if I hear Bunsen again, I'm going to flip it. I was like, all right, boys, let's go get a coffee. And then we went around to Sonoma. I was like, yeah, what do you want? Coffee, and just sitting there. And the lady comes out, like, Isaac, Bunsen. And guess who it was? Fucking Simi. Just shit like that. You'd be so angry, but just have a way. And then all the boys in the background just go.
So talk to me before it started to like, unravel, for the lack of a better word. What do you think was the peak of YKTR Sports in that era? You had all the podcasts and all the content and the label. When was the peak of that?
Probably like just before the Grouse and a Few Reds almost got cancelled.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That was another big thing you had to deal with as well. What was going through your head at that time?
Oh, it was scary. Like death threats for like the boy. Weird thing was
that a Simi joke as well?
Eh?
Was it Simi as well that did that joke? Yeah. I think I spoke to him about it.
That was like, if we had Grouse and a Few Reds running and then probably like YKTR Sports Show with Mason there running at the same time.
Yeah, because he was there the last few months, right?
Few months, yeah. And the thing was with Scope was like I was trying to keep him on board, but I didn't really have a role from him. So we started like the sports show, and it used to be me and him. Yeah. And Mace would come on and do like an Origin preview. So like Mace, you guys are like perfect.
Yeah.
So I was literally just trying to find stuff for Scope to do so we could like fill up his time because he was on a full-time wage. And then obviously those boys killed it and done their own, and they got levels now, which is great. But yeah, I probably, if we had that show running and Grouse and a Few Reds at the same time, it was like we were kind of like printing money at the time. Before the ad revenue that was coming through, the boys were making good money off all their bonuses. That was probably the peak of YKTR Sports, I reckon.
So at what point in that, as well, you're talking about Grouse and a Few Reds, YKTR Sports, when do you put like the ICE project on the back burner? When did that, is it like you started to focus more on the team than that personally? When did that kind of happen?
That's kind of where I fucked up. When I think about it now, if I stayed in my YKTR lane and we just focused on clothing and we were selling out, we couldn't hold enough clothes at the time. And I just done ICE project. And if that's all I'd done, I'd be like, I've calculated numbers before and I reckon I would have been close to having enough to retire individually, which is like kind of a sobering thought. I remember I ran it through ChatGPT, like blah, blah, blah. But it was that thing. Like, I was like, I feel like I can do something else and help the boys. And Scope had just come back from England. I was like, old podcast show. I was like, start us a American sports show. And because I knew how much money I was making from podcasting, I was like, my brain's going, all right, cool. If I have 5 of these shows and I'm taking 20% of those shows,
like having,
they're doing all the stuff. And then you spend all your time building a business and ICE project gets thrown in the back burner.
So on that, like let's flip the perspective and say you're one of the team and someone else owns the business, right? Where do you think your head would be at? Like putting yourself in their position, like where do you think that your head would be at? Like with that, like what do you think? How do I phrase this better? Like if you were an employee, like, and this is something you would have, I'm sure, learned upon reflection. It's very difficult when you're in it. If you're an employee and you're one of those boys, like, do you think there would have been anything else that you could have given yourself that would have maybe, righted the ship and kept it going down that direction where it was at the peak? Is there anything on reflection?
Nah, I think there was 2 models going around at the time. There was us and like Bloke in the Bar. And I think Denon nailed the model where he had the platform. Like, you boys come on for free. You can build your platform through me. And then after that, you can go monetize your own way.
Yeah.
But like, I always felt like a little bit like, I remember listening to the Hello Sports Boys and they had, whoever the guy is that used to do the editing. And, they didn't pay him for like 2-3 years or something like that. And in my mind, I think that's like, I'd feel guilty for doing that just individually. But so I was like, shit, let me just front load the boys in money now. And some of them are only on part-time, some are on full-time. I felt guilty for them spending 2-3 hours in. Where Denon's gone the model of like, I've got the platform, you want to grow your platform, come jump on me, but you can go do your own thing. I wish I'd done it that way.
Exactly. And then, but as well, like the boys on Denon and why it fits so good, they also have their own businesses that they pay the bills for, that they're responsible for inside of that. So it kind of works. Whereas like at the end of the day with the model you had, it all filtered down to you.
Me,
and you're the one that had to bear all the weight of the pressure of, paying all the bills, making sure everything's working really, really well. But I think now, like from our conversations over the last couple of weeks, do you feel like now is the time where all of the learnings from that period of just thinking like, that's it, this is what I want to do for me and this is how I want to structure things, and I'm just going to spend the next, say, few years going after and actioning all the things and all the lessons that took me away from that retirement fund you could have built yourself and try and implement that.
Yeah, for sure. Like I probably don't deserve to be successful if I can't take all those lessons and you know what I mean? If I keep making the same mistakes, I'll be like, yeah, you don't deserve to be successful.
We talk about all the lessons that came from that period, but like first thing that pops into your mind, what was your favorite memory from those days?
It was all fun. Like, don't get me wrong. Like I said, I was like your last year of school.
Yeah.
And yeah, I don't know, like all those magic round things we used to do, a lot of the reactions, but like I am happy for those boys to go on and like do their own things and create their own lives. And I feel like that's cool. I just wish it all ended on like, yeah, I wish we could all like just catch up. And
because you're mates with Simi again, right? Like what do you foresee a world where like you want to be able to like heal that with Scope? And
I think I'll heal it with Scope for sure. Because like we were friends since we were like 17 and like Scope sometimes moves unintentionally. That like, you know, sometimes he just does stuff and there's a consequence to that for other people. Yeah. I think that's just how he moved during that time. And that's like, I sit back now and like, that's okay.
Yeah.
Him and like Normie are still really good mates. Yeah. He's mates with, it's hard because like all of our kind of crews kind of like intersect at some point, whether it's weddings or testimonial games. So like, I don't think there's going to be an issue there, but it's not like, I'm not going to like jump on the table and share a beer or share ideas or, you know what I mean? Like the way I see it is like I invited some of those guys into my home and like, they just talk from me, which is like, for me, someone invites me into their home, like I feel like I'm loyal to that person like forever.
It is difficult as well, but I go back to that point I made before, and it's definitely like I'm saying these things. I definitely don't live them and embody them myself in every situation, but it's like you park all that drama and everything that happened. It's like, look at the position that Scope's now in with levels with Mace. Like, it seems like they're doing so well. It's like, that wouldn't have happened if this didn't happen. Yeah. So if nothing else, like that's a really fucking good thing that came from it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And it was cool. Like even to put like, I thought Mace was always like way too talented for the show he was doing. And like, I was just like, how are you not like bigger?
Doing like something like,
to me, it didn't make sense. And like, he might've been, I don't know.
Such a natural. Like he's so good. Like
I genuinely think he's like the best rugby league talent we have.
I'd fucking put him up there for sure.
Yeah, so I'm just trying to think of like could be as good as him. I think he's just got the right balance, and Scope's a bit perfect too, guy. Yeah, like Scope lays him up, like sets him up really nicely. But like we used to have conversations behind the scenes, like how do we like position conversations to get the best out of Mace? And I don't think anyone will be able to do it as good as Scope.
Yeah. So, but then when Mace rocks up, is he just fucking? That's just him. That's just his takes. Is just
yeah. He's funnier off air than he is on air because he just say whatever.
Yeah.
He says whatever on air, but he knows like when the cameras aren't rolling, he can say some other stuff as well. So he's funnier off air.
That's probably the reason that like element of sort of like wildness about him, maybe why he didn't go so far into like the Nine or the Fox stuff. Do you think a little bit too restricting for a personality like that?
Probably. And like podcast is a perfect platform because you can talk at length. Yeah. Like if you think you're on TV, you got ad breaks and you got 3 other people that want to get a conversation, and like his takes need to come down a lot shorter.
So I want to flip back to something we we're just talking about as well, like to kind of tie up that period, which again, like you could probably write a book on, like that period in your life. But let's talk about the future. I mentioned you're a guy with like a lot of different projects, right? What are you doing from the next? Because I know you've got that potential move to Queensland. It seems like the plan, it's not kind of set in stone yet, but like, how do you go about planning and goal setting for the next chapter in your life? Is goal setting something you put a big emphasis on, or do you just follow feeling and intuition?
Like I've gone hard back into gratitude recently to start my day. Like that's kind of been the big one. Fun fact, I actually own the word grateful in Australia.
Oh, do you? I love it. Yeah, you put a lot on a lot of the YKTR stuff.
Yeah,
right?
trademarked it. But
it's a good one. That's a good get. It's a good get.
Someone had trademarked it since 2000. I was like, geez, you know, we've taken it.
Yeah, thank you.
It's funny you own it and sometimes you don't even live up to it. But like I've been going hard back into gratitude and trying to really like align myself with like my alignment comes from peace. And when I'm peaceful, I'm more creative, I'm more fun to be around, be laughing a lot more. So, which is a great part. And I felt like everything's starting to like come back in because a lot of bad things have happened over the past probably like 2 years, to be honest. So So what was the original question?
No, just on that, like energetically, you seem more peaceful.
Oh, yeah.
You seem more at peace. But like from now, you've had that period, a lot of reflection, a lot of contemplation, a lot of new, kind of like setting new directions.
Yeah.
How do you actually like put those goals into place? Because I know a lot of people would love to know that from the way you operate.
Yeah, so move with gratitude in the morning, and I'm writing. Everyone says write down 3. I'm writing like 15 down.
Okay,
and then get back into a really good place. And then I've got a new like goal list that I've written down that I read every single day.
Yep.
It's very direct in what I want. It's very like sometimes I think when people have a goal or manifest, it's kind of like broad. I listened to this podcast the other day, and it's like if you go to a cafe and you order pancakes, you go, "Can I have the pancakes, please?" That's how you order it. You don't go and go, "I wouldn't mind something like a bit sweet, bit salty. I'm not too sure what I want." I think a lot of people when they write goals or manifest in that way, it's very like broad. My new goals, there's only 5 of them, but very precise and direct. So lead with gratitude, read that every single day. We're looking to, they talk about theta, like that period of the morning where you wake up.
Oh yeah, theta waves.
Just before you sleep. Like when I'm getting in that phase now, I'm kind of like trying to dream as big as possible, which is a little bit cool. Like you love it, but like a lot of people hear this and go, shut the fuck up. But trying to maximize that time because the brain doesn't understand the difference between.
Yeah.
So I've gone like super like precise and narrow, but just leaning into the things I think is going to help me get to the next phase.
Yeah, like so you've a lot more emphasis on yourself. And I think there's periods in life where I think we all need to be selfish. There's that classic adage, like you can't fill someone else's cup unless you've got your own cup full. And I think particularly if you want to be any sort of a leader or a figurehead, if you're not looking after yourself first and foremost, then eventually you're going to run out of, energy to be able to give to other people. So I think it's really important box to tick. But I know part of that process from talking to you and understanding your new goals and your new direction, you've mentioned ego a number of times, right? And I think ego is a very interesting conversation. And sometimes some people, when we talk about ego, will just automatically associate it with a negative thing. But it's much more than that, wouldn't you say? That when you start really researching and contemplating your own ego, you realize it shows up in so many different areas of your life and being, right?
Like I said, I've been like writing, I've been writing down a lot lately, and I went through a breakup recently. And speaking of ego in the podcast, that was probably the key part. The key part of
I wanted to get onto this stuff, so let's go.
Yeah, I won't go just there just yet, but she kept bringing it up, and I was like, if this keeps happening, I keep hearing about it. Yeah, like, I want to learn about it so I can like get better from it. But the way I see ego, especially in entrepreneurship, like you associate like a superhero. Like a superhero is like taking on this like villain, and in their mind they feel like they're helping. But during that path, when they're in their big fight, they're knocking over cars, they're knocking over buildings, and even though they might beat they might beat the villain in time, and I look up and like I'm the hero, and look back, you've actually left a path of destruction behind you. And that's how I see ego, especially in entrepreneurships where we're so fixated on goals and we'll do whatever we can do to get there. And once we get to that target, sometimes we look back and there's a path of destruction. Yeah, you're like your family's gone, your friends are gone, and probably when I was at my peak in terms of money value, in terms of YKTR value, I was sitting in front of the Eiffel Tower, and I was like looking around. I wasn't happy. Like I'll never use the word depressed for me. I don't feel like there's people that are actually going through mental health and depression, so I'll never attach that word. But I just felt sad and empty. And the reason why is because like I'd been on this path for so long. I started to like lose friends, I lost touch with family. And I was sitting in front of the Eiffel Tower and I looked around and everyone was happy and they were sharing experiences with each other. And that was a big lesson I learned, was like life's not so much about like the destination where you're at, but who you share it with. And that kind of changed my mentality a bit. And then obviously all the, like not long after that, like we got rid of Caleb, got rid of Simi, and then the boys ended up leaving. So at that time I was under pressure again. And then I was sitting in my office on my own, and Natasha, who's always been with me, she was away in Europe for like 4 weeks, seeing her partner. And the emergency contact number, I remember I was filling out this form and I had emergency contact and I had no one to write down. Wow. Yeah. And I was just sort of sitting there and going like, fuck, like who do I write down? I had no one here in Sydney. And I remember like feeling lonely again. And next thing I done, I was like, frick, who's my like close friends? And obviously like Chico, Normie, like those boys come hang out, and like I'm too busy, I'm working. And I just tried to find like who's my couple good friends and let me spend as much time as I can with them. Quade had just landed back into Gold Coast. So I was just booking flights to Gold Coast and just hanging out with him. One of my best mates, Blake Leary, had a baby and never seen the baby before. To be honest, at that time, couldn't even tell you what the baby's name was.
Yeah.
And literally the next day I was like, fuck, I'm going to Gold Coast. I'm just going to go see him. Hung out with him for the day, met his baby, and I get along with them really well. But it was just good to sort of slow down. And I think that was the start of the slow transition of realize like how lonely I actually was.
So that like, let me take you back to that moment where you're like staring up at the Eiffel Tower. You're not really feeling great. You're looking around, you're seeing all these other people. Now, it's a good realization to have because it sends you down a path of, making changes. But say fast forward, we're like 2 years ahead of that now. What do you think was the perspective shift? Because you said the businesses were doing really well. Everything was firing, yet still for some reason you weren't feeling your best. Looking back on it now and trying to think about how you'd handle that situation different in the future is what's the switch that needs to flick to be grateful in those moments and just appreciate life for what it is, not what you think like it should be or every little detail should look like.
Yeah, I think you just got to remove yourself from the hornet's nest sometimes. Like all my problems I've had in business, I've never been able to solve while sitting in the office. There's always been like while I'm on walks. But like sort of I think about this a lot where like whenever you attach a song, if you're going to attach a song to a movie and a memory, like you feel like you remember that song forever. Like Whitney Houston, Bodyguard, like I'll always love you. Like when you hear that, you can attach it to a movie. I think when you go to destinations, you should be able to attach it with an experience. And sometimes when the best experiences are with other people. Now, a different story if like I'm sitting in front of the Eiffel Tower, got my girlfriend or got 4 of the boys, we're having a picnic, we're drinking wine, we go head out. And then next time I see the Eiffel Tower, I'm like, remember that time we were there and we done this? So I think attaching destinations to experiences with people is probably the like place where I want to go. But the point that was kind of whenever I've been away from work or away from Sydney or away from like the hornet's nest, you sort of sit back and reflect and spend time with yourself and you sort of realize like, I'm actually happy.
Because what's so interesting, something I wanted to ask you about is like one of the biggest challenges as an entrepreneur is not attaching your mental health or your self-worth to the performance of your business. Right? It's like a challenge. I feel like everyone has ebbs and flows of, feeling like they're not so much attaching themselves to that and other periods where it's like, it's really hard to avoid. But from what you just said, like sometimes even when the business is doing really well, it doesn't necessarily mean you're feeling great. Have you now, like, as you get like more experience with business, have you been able to not crack the code, but do you have anything you can do, like anything you say to yourself to help make sure as much as possible you're not attaching your mindset, your mental head frame to the performance of a business, which is going to go up and down every month, every year?
I wish I had a cool answer for you, but no, not really.
It's a tricky one, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. So Corey's like a business partner of mine, but just I get jealous of his like mentality towards things because he just goes like, it is what it is. And I wish I had that. Like, and obviously he doesn't always have all the battle scars and psychological scars from running a business and owing people $500,000 and people stealing from you, stuff like that as well. But like it would be the dream. Like we think about breath work and meditation to get to a point of his mental state of like, it is what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like, I'll probably, when you get to that point again is like, cause I've had great highs and great lows, is like when it's high, it's not going to always last forever. And when it's high, you're either going to be taking money off the table or putting it back into the business, where I was just going like, let's just do fun shit with it.
Yeah.
So once I get to that experience of like success again, I'm like, should have been here before. It's going to die off sooner or later. Like nothing goes up forever. What am I doing during that time to maximize, to future-proof it? And a lot of it comes down to individual personal finances. Like when I had a lot of money in my bank and things were going wrong, I was a bit more chill. You know what I mean?
Just naturally, right? I think that's it's something that I've gone on, like a journey I've got on myself personally, and I think I have been able to achieve that. I think I really, really have. But the problem with me is like I'm quite an extremist. Like I'm all in or I'm not. So it's like sometimes it's like, while I can enable myself to have a little bit of that like kind of normie mentality, it is what it is. It's like for me, it's not it is what it is. It's that if I go to bed every night and my head hits the pillow and I know I've done everything in my power that day to do the right things to move the businesses forward, then for me, doesn't matter if the business is killing it or it's struggling. I know I do this every day. That's all that's in my power to do. I'm not going to lose any sleep.
Yeah.
For me, it's when I know I'm, taking the piss and I'm not actually working on the things I should be on, or I'm avoiding the uncomfortable things that I don't want to deal with.
Yeah.
And the longer you avoid the uncomfortable, the harder it's going to be. And those uncomfortable things don't go away. They only get bigger. The longer you leave them, when you finally are forced to deal with them, sometimes the consequences are much longer lasting.
For sure. Like if you think two biggest problems in business, what, staff and like cash flow, owing people money.
Yep.
So if you strip it all the way back, it's like
those couple of things,
don't owe people money and don't hire fuckwits.
Yeah.
Like, I heard Alex Mosey the other day go, you hire dumb people when you make up dumb rules. And I think about all the rules I used to make up within the office. Like some of them was so like almost common sense. like don't do this. And I couldn't stop laughing at that. Like I was going to share it. But like that, don't hire dumb people and don't owe people money.
Well, let me ask you this then. What part of business do you least enjoy? And not so much what part of business do you least enjoy. Let me frame that question a little bit differently. What are the parts of the process of being a business owner that make you think, and sometimes I'll ask people this and like, no, I never have that thought. Fucking bullshit. Everyone has this thought at times where you're like, fuck, wouldn't it be nice just to have a normal job? What are the moments and the parts of the journey where you just, even if it's for a minute or a second, where you're like, obviously I would never do it, but right now, fuck, I wish I could have a normal job.
Yeah, I think it goes back on that cash flow sort of stuff. Like say like accounting meetings, like, like anything around finance or stuff like that. Like I'll literally like avoid them. Yeah.
Why do you think you avoid? Because I've done that at the past as well.
It's like the same reason people who are big avoid standing on the scales. It's the numbers don't lie. It's the ultimate form of accountability.
Yeah.
It's a scale of a business.
So on the ego.
When things are going great, I'm in there. I'm going to go, fuck.
I don't, fucking, that's the thing, man. I think the reason I ask is as well, like even like I don't know. I grew up in Western Sydney, didn't have a lot of money growing up. I just like, even when things are going really great, I just don't feel good about obsessing with the dollars and cents and stuff like that. So I feel like I'm starting to feel, and I have worked through this a lot. It's like, there's probably a little bit of like trauma in that with me, or avoiding the uncomfortable. And I think found out last year I have ADHD. And I think for someone like myself with ADHD, like the things that make me feel like uncomfortable or annoying or I see as a chore, for someone without ADHD, they probably experience it like a quarter of the amount that I do. So I feel those things really strongly. But what I've learned, and it's like, it's easy to tell yourself this, it's harder to follow through. It's like if something's making you uncomfortable, that's the direction you should run in, because it's where the most growth is. Would you say, looking at your experience and journey, that would be relevant for you as well? Yeah,
for sure. And like what I just talked about, accounting and finance is actually the foundation of like business. So that's the thing that you should know the most.
Yeah.
Now marketing and all that marketing content, all that stuff comes super easy to me, where I've got accountants coming to me like, how do I make cool content? Like, you can't, you're not cool. You're a nerd.
On the ego thing again as well. So obviously like there's positive and negative parts of everyone's ego, whether you're aware of it or not. And for some people, this conversation around ego being good and bad might be like the first kind of time they're hearing this stuff. I hope for the people listening, they would have kind of thought about this before in the past. Now, you mentioned one of the good benefits of your ego and massive strength is, I'm this kid from down south somewhere in some island in New Zealand. Sorry, I don't know where it's from, but fuck it. I can go and start whatever business I want. I can be a first grade footy player and do all this. Like that has served you so much. And it's like, I'm ice, like I'm comfortable. I'll go speak to that girl I want to, and it opens that door. And then you'll go meet this other person in business. There's really cool ways that ego serves you. And I can fully attest to that myself. But what's like one or two examples of a way that you've been able to reflect and realize your ego is actually holding you back in a certain area?
Probably like anything outside of like business. Yeah, probably like friendships. Obviously I've mixed a lot of business and friendships, which I'll never do again.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's kind of a big one. Relationships is a big one as well. Always struggled in relationships I can communicate really well on podcasts, and I can stand on stage and talk to 5,000 people, like that wouldn't bother me. But sort of when you have, and I can speak about myself in a vulnerable state only after reflection, not when it's like right in front, not when someone's like confronting me. I sort of like get all my walls up and shit.
Yeah.
So those are probably like the two ones, and probably the two most important ones, you know what I mean? Like relationships and friendship, like just like relationships in general. So they're the ones I sort of struggle with.
What is it about, like, because I think we've spoken about this before, like it can be a challenge. Like when you've been someone that's been largely single for a decent amount of time, it's extremely busy and happy, focusing on business because, like it's.
Because you think everyone should care what you care about.
Yeah, you're definitely right. Right.
That's all it is. And you think I'm doing this. And the thing I used to struggle with was like, how's this like, how's this guy got a girlfriend who's so supportive, who's so proud of everything that he's doing, but he's only doing like a 10th of what I'm doing in terms of, in my mind, like life, which is like egotistical thing to say.
It comes
you know
back
what I
to
mean?
ego, right?
Yeah, and that's why I'm just sitting there. I was like, he's got the best partner. She supports him, but in my mind, he's not doing too much.
For me, reflecting, I think one of the big challenges for me, and I've been with my partner now for coming up to 3 years. So, bro, I've changed a lot, grown a lot. Like I feel like you can hypothesize where you think you need to grow until when you get in a relationship, but when you actually get in a serious relationship,
They'll tell you.
Yeah. And like at the start, you're like, nah, fuck this. Cause like your ego is like, I'm the best. That's my like mentality to everything. Like I genuinely think I'm the best. Not I'm the best at everything. I just think like, cause if you know to your core what motivates you and like why you want to do things and how much you love and how much you care about people, like I really think everyone should think that they're the best, right? But then when people start bringing to you things that you should work on, then you got to really take a step back and not let the ego get involved and respond from ego straight away. And
that's hard.
And realize, I think a big thing for me was control. And I don't mean control over a partner in any way. I'm really chill like that. But like when you're working, or you wake up and you have your little morning routine, and you go to the office, you work all day, you come home, you unwind for an hour, you go to bed, and you rinse and repeat, and you do that. When you're living for yourself, at least in my experience, you can control every part of your day, every emotion you feel. You can structure everything to make you feel your best at all times. You add another person into that with their emotions, their wants and needs, and maybe you've come home from a long day. All you need to do is fucking just switch off and unwind, and they want to have a conversation about X, Y, Z, and you just really don't feel like it. That like period of realizing like, fuck, I can't control and do whatever I want anytime was like a big thing for me. Is there anything that you think for you that you're like, fuck, that's definitely something I need to work on?
Yeah, I think I like a lot of as when I was in relationships, I was very solution based. So
that'll get you in trouble, man. I'll tell you that one for free. Yeah.
Yeah, I learned that. So like, obviously when girls come home, they're like very emotional people, like a lot of estrogen, blah, blah, blah. So when they come in, sometimes when they talk, they just want to vent and have like someone who wants to listen to them. But then obviously you're the entrepreneur and you're the business guy. And you're like, oh, shit, I got a solution for this. Yeah. She must want to hear it. Just learning to be in those situations. And like you talked about, like, I generally think I'm the best. And I think I'm going to do great things in this life. And even like in my past relationship, like we'll go into, say like bowling, for example. It'll be like a double date. Like I want to win. Like, yeah. In my mind, I want to win.
I'm not a fan of letting someone win just because you're on a date, personally.
Me too.
Come on.
But then
because then I'm lying to you. That's worse.
Yeah. And then you feel like you're shrinking your version of yourself to accommodate to people around you.
Yeah.
Which like hurts as well, you know what I mean? Because you're not really allowed to be yourself. But I heard soon I put up a post yesterday. We all seem to know what you're going through on Instagram. and like obviously since I've broken up, like I get a lot of like breakup content, which has been interesting. But Jay Shetty said,
I need to see your breakup content series. Come on.
Yeah.
Got to get it out.
Yeah, I'll get it out. Because I've been thinking about it a lot. But Jay Shetty was saying like people want their partner to love them for exactly who they are, but they don't spend time explaining to their partner who they are. And that was the thing that like hit me in the gut again. And I was like, that's what's happened.
That's interesting. Say that to me again.
So when you're in a relationship, people want their partner to love them exactly for who they are. But a lot of the times we don't spend time explaining who we are or why we are that person.
I think like if Mel's listening, like my partner, I think that's something like she does better than I ever thought I could expect. Because like I am like I'm very unique. I'm very particular about certain things and I'm like full on, like I just don't like, I'm unapologetically myself, right? And she sees me in all different states. So like to find someone that you're able to completely be yourself with, as silly, as stupid as possible, as vulnerable as possible. If someone can see that and like doesn't love you in spite of it, loves you because of those weird, unique things, I think then you found your person.
Yeah, for sure. And like the weird thing you say about that, because like I spent a lot of time in Gold Coast and got to meet my ex-partner's like family and like the person who she is now, she's very good at what she does. Very self-driven, motivated. She doesn't need any help for that. Successful in her own right. And like me understanding her like upbringing and stuff like that, she could comprehend it. Like I could comprehend how she was, where she didn't know anything about me because I never used to say anything. You know what I mean? So like I'd met her whole family, her friends, her friendship base and knew everything about her. I was like, oh, this is why she is the way she is. And then I'm coming into bowling and I'm competitive where I had a dad who's, you have to win or you ain't getting talked to on the way home.
Do you ever feel, or has a girl ever said this to you? Like, Isaac, you're so open and vulnerable on a podcast, but like you won't share or open up in the same way one-on-one?
I've probably got a different, and I can only speak from experience, and I'm hearing you talk about your partner and that sounds like great. But whenever I've been vulnerable in relationships, and there was a couple of times this year where I needed to be, and I felt like I could lean on there, I haven't really got the response that I was hoping for. And sometimes it's not even a response, it's just like support. Yep. So in my mind, and this will probably change over time, is I don't feel like you should be vulnerable in certain relationships. I feel like it's okay to be vulnerable as a man, but for me, I'm only going to be vulnerable to like certain people outside my circle that I can be vulnerable with, which sounds kind of sad. But just going off past experiences, I think it's good to be vulnerable in relationships.
It's an interesting one as well. Like, just to like relate back to my experience as well. I thought I was vulnerable. Like before business, I did acting for like 5 years, had an agent, learned how to make myself cry, in touch with my emotions, all that sort of stuff. So I thought because I'm in touch with my emotions, I was vulnerable. And it took me at least a year in the relationship, me and Mel, to realize I'm not actually vulnerable at all in the deepest ways. Like, I don't share any of my problems with people because, and I think with this, we came back to my childhood. So I lived with my mum and my grandparents till I was 5, which was great, like in a granny flat out the back. And then I moved in with my mum and my stepdad. And then after 6 months of living just my mum and my new stepdad, he had older siblings that, their mother was going through some drama. So then out of nowhere, 3 much older siblings who were complete strangers, I used to have to share my life and house with them. So I just went internal. And like, I didn't need anyone for anything on the big, deep emotional things. I'll talk to you about whatever emotion or this, but really I never shared the big things. And this is still something I'm working on. I just handle all those things myself. And it's like,
is that a bad thing though?
I don't know. That's the thing. I flip back and forward. I'm self-sufficient. I'm self-sustaining. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's what I do. Like I generally don't think I need anyone.
Same, dude.
And when I was younger in relationships, like when first little argument, I was like, well, you can leave if you want. Like,
yeah, I know.
Has the door moved since we like got in this conversation?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's always been like that because I knew I was so comfortable on my own. And I think it's a great skill set to have in business. Like,
but let me ask you this. What do you really want, say, like, what do you want from your life in terms of like outside of business? What do you see for yourself?
I think the happiness one is the big one. And for me, happiness does involve business and creating new ideas and making things out of nothing. It involves travel, involves like a partner that you can travel with and do cool things. Like I'm 35 now too. So I'm starting to think it's not all about business, even though it is a part of my life and I love it. But yeah,
do you see yourself wanting to have kids one day or?
Maybe one, maybe 2. I don't know. Maybe in like once I'm financially set, maybe that's the thing that's always like stopped me.
Why do you think you'd wait till then?
I think just do a cooler life with them. Like I don't see my kids going to like normal schools and shit like that. I'd rather. I heard this like these people, they're like got a lot of money. So instead of a teacher getting paid $80,000 to work at a primary school, there's 5 families and they all chip in, like, say whatever it is, $20K a year, give them $100K and they look after your 5 kids. Cool. Yeah, I think that's cool. And like, you don't need to be at school for fucking 6 hours.
No way. Dude, yeah.
And you're going to get better experience through travel, through experiencing different cultures, through reading, whatever AI is tossing up by then.
Yeah.
And then a bit of social interaction through different things. You're probably going to get a better social interaction through sports because there's results attached to it immediately. Not probably anymore, but
Blake explained to you how his school that he teaches that works?
Yeah.
It's pretty cool, eh?
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Yeah. I think it's going to be a changing of the guard, but I think if I got to a point where like travel's like my big thing, I love it. And like a kid sitting in school all the time, like if you could create a system where they could still learn, but they can come with you wherever, I think that'd be cooler.
Do you think you'd learn like every time you go, you do a week or 2 in Bali or you go to a Europe trip or whatever, you come back with new learnings every single time?
All the time.
You do, right?
Yeah.
What is it about travel that you think, because I'm sure you would have reflected on it, what is it about the actual act of travel that just fucking shows you things so clearly?
Just time alone. You're at a normal routine system. Yeah, I don't know, like you're sitting in planes for like 6 hours at altitude, like apparently that does something to your thinking capacity. I don't know, like I generally enjoy being on my own and sitting in my own thoughts, and like I think solitude's paradise for me. And then like when I start writing things down, like things just start to like pop up. So it's just like self-analysis, I reckon. It's like they say great men are built in solitude.
Yeah.
And you see why people Stoics take off into caves and living there and think about things. I generally think if I was to spend enough time on my own, I could write a really good book or like a little one-liner thing.
Something you, like a word, a
Is
term.
that ego talking to? The stoic ego.
A word you mentioned to me for the first time I ever heard you last week was pantheism.
Pantheism.
Pantheism or pantheist. I did a little bit of research after our conversation. I thought, fuck, it's pretty close to how I would describe myself. But could you explain kind of what your definition is to people listening? A lot of the people probably haven't have heard of it. And then what about sort of that way of seeing the world appeal to you?
So like a lot of people would ask me like, what's your like religion? And I would say like I was atheist, but I started thinking about like, we can't be like the highest.
Yeah.
Like we humans.
Talk about ego, right?
Yeah. Like humans can't be like the top of the pyramid because like we can't even get along with each other. We can't look at a person with a different skin color like around the world and get along. Like we think it's okay to like pedophiles exist within our like race, you know what I mean? Or within humans. So I was like, we can't be it. But I just generally didn't believe in religion or organized religion. But I think pantheist is just kind of like replacing the word God with like universe and world. And like I've studied a lot of things like vibrations. And there's a great book called The Kabbalion that talks about the 7 Hermetic teachings. That's my core philosophy in life. And like a few of them are like law of attraction is one of them. Mentalism, which basically means if it's in your mind, you can pull it down into existence. So if you think of a pyramid and you think there's 3 layers to it, there's the physical layer, which is the realm that we live in now. There's the like mental layer. And then there's the spiritual layer. So if you go from top of the pyramid down to physical, like if you think of vibrations up there, like going like that. So if you think of like a hummingbird flying, it looks like they're just floating. If you look at religion and how they paint like Jesus, it looks like they're floating. So in terms of the way I see the world, spirituality is at the top, but it's at the highest frequency of vibration. And then as it goes down the pyramid, it gets like slower and slower into where we are right now. So we're moving around, there's energy everywhere. So if we're like with our partner, we go to Westfields, you think of all the energy sources that we walk past. Technically, we've only walked about 1 kilometer in terms of distance that's tracks on our Whoop. If you think about how many people you walk past, when you get home, what happens? You're fucked, you're tired because you're going past different energy sources. So I just believe there's energy within everything, and just putting yourselves in the right energy sources is the best way that you can help yourself get better. But like understanding that pyramid there. The next one is like the law of correspondence, everything all above, all below. So you can go into the like mental world and pull it down into the physical world, which is like manifestation.
What's this book called again?
The Kabbalion.
The Kabbalion. 100% I have to read it.
It's
100%. The shit you're saying right now is like, Mel will love it too. It's fucking right up my alley.
It's good. And then like there's a law of there's a law of like flow rhythm. So we talk about ebbs and flows, which is the name of my podcast. Like if you think about what goes up, must come down. Tides come in, tides come out. Everything has a flow to it. Like you open that door, you have to close it. And life has a rhythm to it as well. So you understand these things. And the last one is like the law of gender. So there's like, if you think of gender, like a guy having sex, like there's giving and there's receiving. I'm talking to you. What are you doing? You're listening.
So cool, dude. Like that journey that I feel like it's a percentage of the world goes on of like self-actualization and like really trying to become the highest version of yourself. I think once you get a taste of it, and I couldn't encourage people listening anymore to like go down that journey and start peeling, like flipping the pages and start going deeper on all the layers, because like that whole question of like, how did we get here? And you're thinking about, fuck, we can't be the highest level of everything as well. It's like,
we're low species.
Like it's something that still blows my mind to today. And I'm like quite similar as well. Like I'm definitely not religious. Like I definitely don't believe in a structured religion at all, but something I've been thinking about just maybe the last year or 2 years, not purposefully, but a lot of different situations have come up that have made me think, am I replacing the word universe for God out of an ego thing? I've been really trying to analyze, is that an ego thing? Like, is it like, not that I think like I'm the top, but it's like, I don't want to give, I don't know, you know, I'm just reflecting on that. Do you feel like that avoidance of the word God could be to do with ego in any way, or?
No, because like being a pantheist, like you don't attach like the higher being to an individual person. So like there's a lot of religions out there and they believe in a certain person. So it's not putting a personified version on that. And I think it's just a universe. It's just a broad way of saying like, I believe in something bigger than me.
Because that's where it loses me as well, right? It's like that one thing, that one person, this, you know, I feel like at times could be lost, but I've also had experiences over the last year or two where I feel like, and we'll talk about this off air, like I feel like, I feel like I've got a connection to God.
Yeah.
And that's like weird
That's
for me
good.
to say as well, like for context about what I usually speak about or believe in, but it's really interesting. Another thing we had a brief conversation about that I think is really interesting as well is human design. I know you've just recently started looking into a little bit of human design. What's your experience with that been? And do you think it's like something you are interested in out of curiosity, or do you think it could be kind of used as a tool for self-development and growth?
I think it's a tool of self-development and growth, but it's like so someone who's deeply religious probably doesn't need it because they believe in a certain path for them, like they say God's plan.
Yeah.
And like I said, like everyone just wants to believe in something bigger than themselves. So like say I'm with Pantheism, I believe in a universe. It doesn't necessarily have a end path to it, like where religion does. Like if you can obey the 10 commandments, you live a righteous life, you're going to get accepted into heaven. That's a nice path to follow. I think human design just a path that's more individual. A lot more individual. And it's based off like where you're born, when you were born, what time you were born, which is, and apparently where the stars align during that day. It's kind of your path's already laid out for you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like I went on a date with this girl maybe like 2-3 years ago, and I was just talking about astrology because I thought it was like a cool thing.
Like this is my in.
Yeah, because I knew a bit about my astrology, which is like Sagittarius, but that's only like the most basic fucking
Do you know
thing
like
in the
your
world.
moon and your rising? What are your other ones?
I think what's the love planet? My one's Scorpio.
Okay, Scorpio.
And then my other one is Capricorn.
Okay.
So she told me after knowing that, she goes, I always struggle in relationships because Capricorn's like Earth, which means like you're grounded, you're well thought out, but the Scorpio like believes in love.
Yeah.
So I've always got this internal clash within the inside that's always going to happen for me. And she said, as a Scorpio, you've also got like a petty side to you. So if something bad happens, which we've talked about.
Scorpio's my like main sun sign. So yeah, I'm fucked.
Yeah. So she was talking about like, I'll go out of my way to make that person's like, and like I have those thoughts, but it doesn't mean I have to act on those thoughts as well.
I've had those thoughts in the past as well. And I've just moved past those because like, I think you do it a few times and even just the thought of doing some of these petty things is really exhausting and draining on yourself.
It's
like,
so draining.
Fuck this, dude. Like I'm just going to move past to understand that it's not serving me and try and like, fucking just get past it and do things in a healthier way. But
being angry and being anxious are like two of the biggest energy wasters ever.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you, as like you live you're quite a public person going on a very tumultuous journey. Do you ever like, I know you said you wouldn't ever describe yourself as like having depression, but do you ever feel those moments of like anxiety building up and the pressure and you're just like, fuck, I wish I could crawl into a hole and just disappear for a little while?
Yeah, I think so. Like, I'm obviously it's a mental health month and stuff like that. Cause I never associate those words to myself because I'm not saying I'm immune to them and they just haven't happened for me, but I feel like some people use those words as a like scapegoat to get out. And the hard part is there's actually people that are really struggling with like all that sort of stuff, depression and suicidal thoughts. And I grew up in a town with the highest suicide rate in the country. So like suicide was kind of like normal in our hometown. And which just sounds sad to say. Yeah. Like if you go, oh, like they hung themselves, it was like, oh, yeah, which is like really sad. So, but like, yeah, I definitely feel anxious on some things, but I think that's just normal. I think I think being nervous and anxious has kind of got intertwined a lot. Like I remember being a kid and I'm nervous before this game or got butterflies before this game where like it gets thrown into underneath anxious right now. And it's got us like.
It's the same energy, right? Yeah. It's just the framing in which you see it.
And framing's everything. Like I read a lot of books over the past couple of years and reframing's a big one. I read one the other day about dogs. So like a dog's human life 1 year is a dog's 7 years. But if you strip that all the way back, like 1 day for a dog is like 1 day for us is like a week for them. So if you spend a day with them, like that's the equivalent of you spending a week with them. Strip it back again, 1 hour is like 7 hours. So if you take your dog for an hour walk, it's the equivalent for them of spending 7 hours.
Dogs are the best. I know you've got like a really good relationship with your dog, Mello. Like what is it? I don't know, it's completely off topic, but there's something perfect about dogs that we almost don't deserve.
It's like the ultimate form of love. It's an energy exchange.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like we can't even speak the same language. When you walk through the door, they don't judge you for what you do, who you are. They only judge you for how you treat them. That's it.
Yeah.
And they show you love. They live a very simple life that's like admirable. Obviously they don't have to pay bills and shit. But like if they get invited, they're excited. Like, do you want to go for a walk? They jump out of their skin. When you come home, they're so excited to see you. So naturally you're excited to see them.
Legit.
They eat the same thing every single day and they're happy to eat it. All they want to do is hang around people they love and get some sleep and go for a walk.
You can learn
That's
a lot.
the ultimate life.
You can learn a lot from your dog as well, like in really simple ways. Like sometimes I'll get home late, 10 o'clock, 10:30 from quite a, full on or potentially stressful day. And like you said, your dog's just so excited to see you. And like you walk in the door and, your brain's still turning over and you're not fully present. And then you see how fucking excited your dog is. Then you're just like, fuck, I'm just going to like fully like give myself into this moment and just be present. And that's like the gift they can give you. You know what I mean? It's fucking the best. And that's why it's like, I feel like the biggest unlock, and I have moments of understanding it. I'm sure a lot of people do, but it's like to just like really trust in the process. And like I do, and I have so much belief, self-belief and what I'll achieve, but it's still really difficult to just like, like the subtle art of not giving a fuck, just really be present in each moment and give 100% of yourself to that moment each and every time. And I feel like that's why podcasting is so good, because like you're forced to be present. Otherwise you fucking say something and I'll be like, oh shit, sorry, bro. You know what I mean? Like those moments, or like playing a sport or doing a martial art, like it's like extended periods of meditation because you've solely focused on that one thing. And I think that's when there can be a little bit of benefits. The power of happiness, I feel, for me, is just being where my feet are.
I was just about to say that. And that was a quote that I heard someone else say it. My friend Grayson Hart, who runs Pure Sport.
Oh, I interviewed him over in London when I was there. Legend of a guy.
Good
fucking
dude.
You're good dude. Yeah.
And like he's going through a bit of stuff at the moment, but one of the things he wrote was like, be exactly where your feet are. Is that a Buddhist saying or?
I think it might be where your feet are. Yeah.
And like sometimes like when I start like drifting off, because if you look at the three perceptions of time, past, present and future, like obviously when you're looking back in this is a relationship conversation again, like I'm looking back in the past, you start to dwell and start to miss him and stuff like that. But being exactly where your feet are is understanding, all right, like she didn't want to like date you anymore. So that's accepting reality and then getting excited for the future. Is like when I feel sometimes I get lost in business and life and relationships. I sort of like take a deep breath in and just go, fuck, where am I right now? Can I just zone in on that? And that's what dogs always do. They're always present.
I've never really I'm not much of a dweller. I think because of maybe my ADHD, I know it would probably learn pretty early on. It wouldn't be good for me. So I'm like, I just don't do it.
Hyperfixate on the past.
Hyperfixate. It's like, I just know it's only going to cause negative feelings for me. So I don't do it. But I also think as well, and I 100% agree, like the power of being where your feet are is like, it's the greatest gift. But some of my most successful periods in life or business have come off the back of living a lot of time in the future. Like when I say I'm a big visualizer, I don't visualize, I time travel. Like I go and I fucking experience those moments. And like whenever I can give myself so fully to experiencing the future, all these things I want to achieve or do, and I'm there, I'm not judging it. I'm not, overanalyzing any details. I'm just fucking living it out in my head. I'm there and I'm feeling it and I'm feeling the emotions. And then off the back of that, if you can channel that energy and you've got a fucking plan in reality to make it happen, and it doesn't always follow that same plan, but you've got this like fucking vision of where you want to go and you've got a plan to get there. If you just fucking commit to both of those things, the universe will figure it out for you.
Yeah, for sure.
Massively fucking powerful.
And it's funny you say that about imagination, because I think that's one of my like greatest like strengths, and like how I can visualize being in a certain space and like gives me butterflies of like I'm actually there. And like you say, like you be fixed on vision, but like flexible in how you get there.
Yes.
And like the universe is going to decide how you get there.
100%.
You won't always like it, but yeah, like I'm like, I feel like I can get excited about like a dream.
There's something in what you were explaining before about the energy and the accessing different things. And I think that's something I want to dedicate a bit more of my life to understand more, because I've experienced this full on myself.
Yeah.
But I want to ask you a few last questions before we wrap up now. A lot of people that listen to the podcast, again, it's grown a lot. So it's not just, it started with like a big e-com crowd, because that's where I'm from. Now there's still a lot of people in e-com, but a lot of people are, as I was talking to you before we started recording, it's that kind of like startup phase. Either they're early stage, the first few years in business, or they've been thinking about it for ages and they're in the process of like, figuring out their plan out of whatever reality they're in right now, and, taking themselves out of that reality, putting themselves on the right path so they can go live the life that they've always envisioned and they deserve. So let me just like ask you some questions, take you back, say 7, 8 years before you'd started a business. You didn't know what you know now. Now that you do, let's just say you were starting again. YKTR, for those who don't know, a really successful fashion label, done heaps of awesome things over the last 8 years or so. Now, if you were going to start a fashion brand today, right, and you say you didn't have heaps of money, maybe 10, 20 grand, what would be your plan? Where would you start?
Getting a very core logo, That's it. So if we think about a brand like Off-White, Supreme, if you actually study really great brands, they've got a really strong logo. The logo stands for something. Now, the good thing about having a really good logo is you can flip it 1,000 different ways and you don't have to spend time designing or coming up with new things. So that will be my big one, but also understanding who you market to. That's a big one. Whenever I've got in trouble within business, when I've been chasing trends, when you build a brand, you don't need to chase trends.
Yep.
So I'll give you an example. So there's 4 guys. This is really important if you run a clothing brand. So especially a guy's brand. There's 4 guys, so there's us 4 in the room. You're the styling guy, so you want to wear that shirt first before anyone else wears it. Now you come to the pub, me and him are going to pay you out. Like, oh, what do you wear that for?
Yeah.
So but you start to wear it a little bit. I follow you. I'm like, oh, that's a cool jumper. I'm going to copy that too. So I start wearing that. The 3rd guy wears that, and then the 4th guy. By the time the 4th guy wears it, you're onto your next thing.
Yeah.
So understanding where you sit within that person is really important. So for us, we sit between the 2nd and 3rd person. We don't want to be the first person to create the brand new thing. Some brands do. We used to want to be that, but if you miss the trend, you lose all your money. Not all your money, but you lose a lot of money. If you understand that trend like that, the curve, what's it called? The mass adoption.
I'm not sure what it's called, but I know what you're talking about. When did that realization happen? I'm assuming you didn't have that clarity going into it.
Yeah.
It's something you would have kind of worked out going forward. Like once you've kind of operated the business, what gave you that realization? And I'm assuming it would give you a lot of clarity with making decisions around designing new lines and the future of the business, right?
Sales.
Okay, yeah. So actually.
Yeah, numbers don't lie. So like, I'll give you an example. So we went to Seoul, maybe 2019. Everyone was dressing there how we dress now. Like everything is wide and baggy and like cropped. So we try to create some of the stuff like that. Like this is perfect, but we dropped it. Nothing sold.
Wow.
Yeah. So we put it on ice for like a year and a half. We brought it about a year and a half later and it started to move like a little bit. But at that time we were chasing trends. Like the best thing you can do is build brand. Mm-hmm. And a lot of the best brands now, we talked about this earlier, just building a personal brand.
So obviously like fashion in general is like probably the most saturated industry you could get into. Having that unique point of difference is something that's really important, right? What's a way that you think like a founder of a new brand or a brand could come up with that point of difference before going into such a saturated market?
Marketing. And marketing comes back to personal branding and branding. So most clothes are exactly the same. Like Kanye West said it the best, a hoodie's a hoodie. Like you might change the shape of it. And a lot of people obsess over details like, oh, this stitching on the back is like, we're better than everyone else, but it's not. It's like, how can you make someone feel something about that product that you're wearing? If you look at sports jerseys, if someone wears a Rabbitohs, they're associated to a team, they're associated to a certain area, to a certain demographic. If he's wearing G'd up, they associate to a certain way of lifestyle. It's like, we don't really care what other people think. This is who we are. So, like I sort of said like a little bit earlier, it's that chasing trends is a hard one because you're always going to have to chase the next one. It's like, say, drop shipping, like there's products that fly. Once that product stops, you got to move on to the next product.
So what do you think's the core of YKTR, the energy, the vibe that makes you guys, where you guys do your best work?
I think at the start, it was like we had an aspirational brand. So you looked at us and 2 of the boys are still playing football. I was into business. We were traveling. We played so a lot of the guys in their 20s looked at us like, fuck, you guys are cool.
Yeah.
So it's building that sort of aspirational sort of storyline. G'd up, do it really well.
Yeah.
And like Jakey lives that life. He's got Rolls Royces. He's got Ferraris.
You see him cruising around these streets all the time. You're like, it's got to be him.
Yeah, for sure. So like he's built an aspirational aspect to a brand that someone who's from Western Sydney or a lower demographic area can go, fuck, Jakey's my guy. You know what I mean? If he can do it, he's from Glenmore Park, same area I'm from.
Fuck, he's from Glenmore Park.
Yeah, lived in Glenmore Park. So if he can do it, I can do it too. And then it's very heavily branded too. So it's like a walking billboard.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, this is what I associate with.
Yeah. So the future of YKTR, you've spoken a little bit over the last little period about kind of that new brand, that new direction. What do you want that to be now? You've obviously you've matured a little bit more as a person. I'm sure how you dress is slightly different as well. What's that new representation you kind of want to build YKTR on?
I don't want to put too much of it out there, but it is obvious. Yeah. I think a lot of the good brands or good businesses are like, say Instagram, like, fuck, it's so obvious now. I think when you look back at our history and then where we're heading towards in the future and who I am as a person right now, once the rebrand comes out, I'll be like, oh, that makes sense.
So let me put you back as that, first time founder for that 6-month period, kind of, let's say just leading up to launch and just after launch, where would you be investing the most of your time in terms of the business? Like it's like, well, how am I going to sell this product?
So how much money you got? 15K?
Yeah, say 15 grand.
What I'll do, I'd build out 3 different collections. I'd focus on maybe a 5 to 6 piece collection drop, whether that be 1 hoodie, 2 t-shirts, a hat.
Yep.
Obviously you got 15K. So you're going to spend say like 2.5K on product, $500 on shipping, and then 2K on marketing. And then instead of just going 15K all in, I'd start to build it that way. Another way I'd probably do it is build it for a pre-sale model. So just go local production, see if you've got any validation in the market, see if you can actually make $1 in a saturated market before you start doing, I've got 15K here. All right, cool. I've got $1,000. Let me see if I can turn that into $4,000.
And that's so important, like when you're a startup business in that first 6-month period, like if you're going to invest your very limited marketing spend, you want to hope it's going to return multiples of what you've invested, or you're going to run out of runway really soon. Now, as someone who's like on the forefront of content marketing in Australia, like, and you have been as well, I'm not just blowing smoke up your ass for at least the last 5-6 years. I know you watch very closely trends in content and the new styles of content. What sort of content would you be producing if you have like a relatively small budget? You know, we all have these things these days. You can get a ring light off Amazon for fucking $15 with just some lighting and an iPhone. What sort of content do you think you'd be producing and telling that story?
Exactly that. We're in the perfect time for lo-fi content. So or having all the big cameras and stuff like that. It's not as relevant anymore. So like you look at brands, they used to spend 10 to 30K on a pre-collection shoot. Now you're better off just shooting off your phone. And we figured this out a while.
Isn't that crazy?
It's good. It's good. But it's going to swing back eventually, like it always does. Like trends always swing. But like now is the best time to have just a lav mic and talk in front of it. And like my content now over the next 4 or 5 months is just purely going to be me and a mic and talking. And I'm comfortable talking as well.
Yeah.
But just documenting. Like a lot of people want to attach themselves to someone, a sports team, ideology, a religion. Sometimes people just love following a certain person because they can relate to them in a certain way.
Yeah.
And the content that's always closest to the people is always going to win.
Yeah.
That's the big one. Because, that dude's just like me, or he's from a certain area that I'm from.
Have you always, because where people can struggle with that, as you know, I mentor a lot of like e-commerce startups, and like it's just the thing that's working really well right now. Obviously, Yui, another example of that, documenting the journey, how they've been so successful. But where I get a little bit of resistance sometimes, which is fair enough. What would you say to the people that are just like, I'm a bit of an introvert. I never really thought I'd want to get on camera and do that stuff. What's your kind of word of advice to those people?
Introverts think they're the only introvert in the world. So if introverts put out content, they're going to be related to other introverts. That's
gold right there.
Yeah. I'd put myself as like an omnivert. Do you know what that is?
Explain it to me.
So omnivert is like, I'm comfortable in like public situations, but I prefer to like, I'd rather be on my own. And like we look for ways out of parties and stuff like that. So I'll send you this little list of what an omnivert is. So you have a combination of a bit of both. So like a lot of people see me make a lot of online content and think I'm like this big outgoing person. And I'm confident I can walk up to a girl in the bar and say like, hey, what's up? Or stand on stage. But I love to be on my own. Like anyone who actually knows me, I'm like, I'll just go sit in my room. Not in a depressing way. It's just like, that's where I recharge my batteries.
Fuck, man. I see a lot of myself in some of the things you explain, man. It's interesting as well. And like, I get that common misconception too. And I feel like as I get older and I mature, I'm becoming less of an extrovert, but not in a way like I'm less comfortable. It's just like, you know, I do all these extrovert things for work and like, this is great. And I'm so grateful. Like, you know, podcast is part of my job, you know, doing all these fucking fun things is part of my job. But it's like, I'm no longer searching for gratification or attention or whatever from other people. So I just feel like, fuck, man. If anything, me going out and talking to all these random people, it's going to drain my energy rather than give back. And I feel like you need to find your own balance of that, right?
Yeah. I think like validation should always come inside out, not outside in.
Yeah.
I've got a pretty successful friend. He's doing some really cool things, but he's always searching for the next like article or the next validation from someone he perceives to be higher than, but he's like just as good as him.
Yeah.
If not better.
Yeah.
But he's always seeking that because he's not validated inside out. And it's harder to get to that point, but once you get there, it's easier.
I feel like if you can do that and you can be that, I think if I look back at my strength with like, you know, say like over the years with like, say women, right? Now I'm obviously not the
my strength with women.
Okay, gotta be careful. I'm not sure if I'm out. The thing I think that was my biggest strength, really. Obviously, I'm not the best looking guy. I'm not the most talented. I'm not the tallest. I'm not the biggest, none of that stuff. But it's like as I said, I'm the best. And like, if you feel like you're the best and not in an egotistical way, you give yourself everything you need, fucking people gravitate towards that. So you find what makes you fucking own it. And you just let the world see it. You'll attract the right people to you, because the one thing is the sexiest thing you can be to the right person is authentic. And I think like, if you can just get out of your own way and just say, fuck it. Yeah, I'm weird in this way, whatever. Everyone's weird behind closed doors. You know what I mean? People really fucking gravitate towards it. So I think it's such a good point you make.
Yeah, there's nothing like more attractive to anyone than someone who's like
just comfortable in their own skin, right? Fucking hell.
And it's hard, the reason you stand out is because everyone's trying to be someone else.
Yeah. Well, you would know from all your content as well. Like you come and you see Hormozy, you see all these great people putting out content. And I think a lot of people fall down the trap, I'm going to try to do Hormozy content.
Yeah.
Well, he's doing Hibbs content, or you try and be Sam Sue. Like, find your own fucking version of that and you do that. And I feel like that's where your success will come.
And you just got to be like consistent. Like that's where I've like, if I was consistent in probably 4 of the aspects of my life that have gone past for the last 5 years, like I'd be sitting in a different position.
Oh, dude, it would be crazy. Look, bro, we could chat for another fucking hour. I don't want to take up too much of your time.
What actually got? Oh, man.
Oh, dude, heaps of different things. But I think we'll wrap it up there. I just want to know, like, one last piece of advice to people that are, questioning themselves or their confidence, or if they should go and chase this dream of theirs, or more specifically business, because there's no guarantees with business. What words would you give them?
Oh, like I fall back on the Gary Vee one. It's like, you're going to be old and die one day.
Yep.
And it's a pretty sobering experience once you realize like this is our sort of one shot at life. And his always advice is like, go talk to older people. My best mate is basically my family. Both his parents passed away within a month, like this year. And like just seeing like how like sad he was such a sobering experience for me, because I'm just going through like business stuff, like code invoices, like who gives a fuck.
Yeah.
But like just putting yourself in experiences. Like whenever I feel myself being ungrateful, like I watch like dog videos of like dogs dying and like kids, stuff like that, because it pulls me
straight away,
pulls me back into line. Like I can, in my mind, I can think like the day if my dog dies, I'll be absolutely shattered. Like the power of imagination is like we can dream of great things, but we can also dream of like those really sad times as well. I sort of put myself in those scenarios. I just don't think like this is it. This is like a one shot.
I 100% believe that too. It's like, I'm spiritual and I believe in the soul, and I don't think once you die, that's it. Like you completely evaporate forever. But I do really feel like you get one shot at this life, dude. Like I feel like regret is the scariest thing ever. Like just go for it.
Yeah.
Everyone just fears judgment or failure. Like if you can just get over those two things, then the world's your oyster.
And like if you sort of understand like the basic cycle of, say you're in a circle here, this is your circle of friends. If you try to get out of that circle, you're always going to get met with resistance. Like we're mammals, we're meant to be herds. So if someone's trying to stand out from the pack, like say wolves, they nip the back of their Achilles heels to pull them back into line. So that's just a natural progression of you growing into this next circle. And then what actually happens after that is like you go through this little lonely period where you feel like you're on your own and you can't relate to people. And this can happen in many different ways. It can happen with a girl who's just had a baby and her friends don't have babies, and then she feels like she's on her own, and then she moves into the next circle, which is like a mum's group, and they go do stuff like that. So that's like the natural progression and the price you got to pay to get to that next circle. And every circle that you go through, it gets smaller and smaller, but your company gets better. You don't have to hang around with too many people.
And like the name of your podcast, ebbs and flows, like there's always ebbs and flows in life. And sometimes when you're in a downhill trajectory, you feel like, fuck, this is going to last forever. I'm absolutely screwed. But you always come back out of it on the other side. Like if you just trust, and that's what I was alluding to before, if you can just like understand that life is about challenges and overcoming them and ups and downs and trials and tribulations, if you can just like enjoy it even when there is a challenge. And I think that's something I learned to do with business. Obviously, sometimes when it's just challenge after challenge after challenge, you think, fuck me. But
I'm drowning.
God.
Let me up.
There's like, I think it was a great lesson. You know what I mean? And I think like every storm will pass. And I think if you just stick on the right path and you believe in yourself, the universe or God, whatever you want to say, will figure itself out for you. So that's a big belief of mine. And
the other one is like, this is one that really tripped me out. And I don't always follow it, but when I do, things start to go really great. So if you think about the pendulum swing like that, so there's like negative and positive to everything in life. So everything has a plane towards it. So there's cold, there's hot, there's death, there's life. But what you got to do is like the universe is always perfectly balanced. So if you're not centered, if you're not grateful for where you are, the universe is going to swing the other way. So I'll give you an example. So say you're getting 1,000 compliments and you're starting to believe those compliments, you're hanging on the positive side. The one comment that becomes negative, it swings all the way back because the universe is always trying to balance itself. So if you watch that David Attenborough thing about the earth and he says like the equator and everything in the world is perfectly balanced to keep it as it is, that's the same for life. But the trick is like if you understand the world is perfectly balanced, if you put yourself under pressure, through exercise, it's going to swing you towards health. So a lot of people, when money comes in, they spend their money on things that are like luxury. So if they're spending on their money over here, it's going to, when something bad happens, the swing comes way harder. If they're putting their money towards the side, eventually they're going to lead towards abundance.
And where that gets real dangerous is if you're attaching your self-worth to those things when it is good, like we spoke about, because then that down is going to really slap. Interesting fun fact, on the equator, I saw this today, a hurricane has never crossed the equator.
Why not?
Fuck if I know. It's just another, how interesting is the universe?
Yeah.
The hurricane has never crossed the equator. Why? It's just this, it doesn't exist. It's just this space, right? There's no actual line, but a hurricane's never crossed it.
Cool.
That's a thought for the day.
Yeah.
So we've got ebbs and flows. What else are you doing at the moment? So Ice Project, you said might come back one day?
Yeah, no, I'll probably bring it back like next week, to be honest. It's going to be like, probably won't interview as many people. It's just going to be like a documentary of self, probably like a journal type of thing.
I think there's a great place in ecosystem content you're doing for that, and it should be that, and it's so easy. Not booking guests, not can you come in? It's like, all right, I got now. I'm going to record.
That's the worst part of podcasting, booking guests.
And managing all that.
The hard part is like podcasts are so common now. Like back in the day, you're like, hey, can you jump on? And most people were keen to jump on because they hadn't really done it. Now they're sort of everywhere. Everyone just goes, come be
you got to really find, like when I'm talking to someone, if it's because now it's great. We get heaps of people apply. So, it makes it easier, but it's still, and I'm sure you would agree with this, maybe a little bit different because yours were mainly athletes, but like the most important thing, if I can't find for me as the person speaking to them, just an interesting angle, what's the angle of this conversation I want to go down? Dude, those are my worst podcasts. Like when you're forcing yourself to try and interview someone you're not really interested in, I think it's a recipe for disaster. And I think that's the one thing Joe Rogan puts his success down to his podcast is like, I just interview people I'm really interested in.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
I'm probably interested in myself at the moment. So that's probably why I'm going
fucking perfect for this chapter. And then on Instagram, IICE _.
I don't know why I've done that. I just like,
it's too OG now. You can't change it.
Yeah, I know. Like
too much SEO to that.
I switched it to Isaac John like a while ago and I was like, fuck, this looks wrong. Yeah. So I sort of switched it back. But
where did Ice come from, that nickname?
One of my mates, he just started calling me it.
It was like before you were even playing footy? Like
when I started playing footy. Yeah. Like when I grew up, my nickname was Izzy. That's what my mum used to call me from a baby. So anyone who actually knows me calls me that. Yeah. But like my sort of football / social media persona is Ice. Yeah. It's cool. It's a cool nickname.
It's not a bad, especially when you're playing in the halves, Ice. All right. We'll leave it there. Thank you so much, brother. Appreciate that, man.
Thanks for having me on, bro.
Cheers. All right, guys, thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this episode or you got something out of it, do yourself a favor, do me a favor, do your friends a favor and share this with them and they can come along on this journey with us. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time.